Esteemed colleagues, distinguished delegates, regional partners, and friends of the Caribbean, though I am unable to join you in person, I am deeply honored to contribute to this important regional dialogue. Let me commend the organizers for convening this critical forum at a time when the urgency of water governance and climate resilience in our region can no longer be ignored, delayed, or deprioritized. We gather under the banner of Integrated Water Resources Management, an approach that is as ambitious as it is essential. Because behind the technical language, behind the policy frameworks and institutional blueprints, lies a fundamental truth. Water is life, and in the Caribbean, that life is increasingly under threat. Sometimes, to understand what's at stake, we must move beyond indicators and targets and return to the lived experiences that shape our regional identity. I remember stories shared by elders from one of our sister isles, stories that remind us that water security was never a given. One such woman recounted how in her youth, water was drawn from a communal well shared by several households, which was then carefully rationed, one bucket for drinking, another for cooking, and another for washing. There was no luxury, only purpose. Children were raised to value every drop, not out of environmental theory, but out of necessity. To waste water was not just discouraged, but it was culturally shameful. That story, while reflective of the past, is still the daily reality for too many in our region today. While investments in water infrastructure have improved lives, climate shocks and systemic gaps means that dry taps, rationed supply, and waterborne illnesses are still far too common. We must not be lulled by our lush green hillsides and seasonal rains. The Caribbean is one of the most water-stressed regions in the world relative to our capacity to safely store, distribute, and manage fresh water. The dual threats of prolonged droughts and flood-inducing storms create a volatile cycle, undermining infrastructure, compromising water quality, and eroding our resilience. In recent years, countries such as Jamaica have had to allocate emergency funds, over $115 million Jamaican dollars, to truck potable water into drought-affected communities. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines as well, shrinking rivers and reservoirs have forced authorities to impose rationing schedules. In Grenada, seasonal valve regulations are now a recurring feature of our dry season management. The stakes are rising, and so too must our resolve. Sustainable Development Goal 6 commits every nation to implementing integrated water resources management by 2030. IWRM is not simply a goal. It is a strategy that demands that water be seen in connection with land, ecosystems, agriculture, energy, health, and disaster risk management. Yet, the global implementation rate of IWRM stands at just 57%, and in Latin America and the Caribbean, it is even lower, 39%. This is symptomatic of fragmented governance systems, weak institutional coordination, and insufficient public participation. As a region already on the front lines of climate disruption, we simply cannot afford this inertia. This is not just a development challenge. It is an issue of human dignity, economic security, and climate justice. Every child missing school due to waterborne illness, every farmer losing crops from irrigation failure, every clinic forced to delay care because of water shortages, these are not just statistics. They are stories of loss. They are avoidable. But let us be clear. Water is the backbone of our climate adaptation strategy. Without water security, we cannot strengthen food systems, safeguard public health, support economic growth, or even recover from disasters. It is water that links the SDGs across health, education, gender, and poverty eradication. But water must also be seen as a public good, managed with transparency, inclusion, and accountability. And that means bringing the voices of those most affected, the women, the youth, the differently abled, the farmers, the indigenous communities into our decision-making processes. IWRM cannot succeed if it remains a technocratic process. It must be people-centered, climate-informed, and rights-based. Across the Caribbean, we are seeing the important progress. In St. Lucia and Grenada, national climate resilience plans are integrating water systems as a critical foundation for long-term adaptation. Regional institutions such as the Caribbean Water and Wastewater Associations and the Global Water Partnership Caribbean are fostering technical cooperation and regional knowledge exchange. But we need to move from pilots to policy reform, from fragmented funding to integrated investment strategies. We must scale rainwater harvesting, upgrade aging infrastructure, improve watershed management, and adopt smart technologies that enable early warning and adaptive planning. None of this is possible without capital and political will. IWRM is not free. It requires long-term, climate-smart financing. We need better access to climate adaptation funds, concessional loans, blended finance models, and regional investment in frameworks that prioritize water security. Caribbean countries must be supported not just to implement, but to lead transformational change in water governance. International partners must also recognize that our water stress is not an isolated issue. It is a bellwether for what unchecked climate change will do elsewhere. Colleagues, we are standing at a threshold. The next 5 years will determine whether we close the gap on SDG 6 or compound the vulnerabilities we already face. Let us be bold. Let us be united, and let us lead with the clarity of vision that our people deserve. I return once more to the story of the woman from our sister isles, walking miles with a bucket, managing water with wisdom, born of necessity. Let us not allow history to repeat itself, not because of scarcity, but because of inaction. We owe our citizens a future where every drop counts and where every person can count on us to protect it. I thank you.